Welcome back to Dr. VoIP's Amazon Connect 2025 update, part 4. And in this tutorial, we're going to add email as a channel. Configuring the email is very straightforward. We're going to first create a domain, and then we'll figure out whether we need to create some new queues or we want to use the existing queues. There's no rule that says you can't send an email to the sales and support queues that we've already created. We might want to create some new queues just so that we can more granularly control which agents are assigned to the routing profile that contains these email queues. We're going to then update the routing profiles to reflect the use of this new channel and also to indicate how many simultaneous contacts an agent can handle. We'll create a message template, and think of a message template as kind of like an autoresponder. Um, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a contact flow with a autoresponder in it using the send message block. Then we'll create some email addresses. These email addresses are going to point to the flows that we just created. We'll verify that the agents have the correct security permissions to make use of email. We'll verify streaming and storage, and we'll also then create a contact router. So as we add channels to the basic configuration that we established in part 2 of this presentation, we now may want to figure out as a contact comes into the system, whether it's a voice call, an email, and later chat and SMS and messaging, etc. So those are the kinds of things that we'll be doing in this tutorial. First thing you have to do is create the email capability. Now, back when we set up the contact center, we checked the box that said we wanted email. So down here, you should have an approved domain for email. And if you're adding this to an existing Amazon Connect instance, then you'll go ahead and click the email link and go ahead and add a domain. And these domains, the system will create one for you and handle the simple email service configuration options to get that domain approved. If you want to add an existing domain, you're going to have to go to simple email services and get that configured. I would also point out that you're in what's called a playpen laboratory environment, and that means that you'll only be able to send email messages to a verified email address. That's how Amazon deals with the subject of email spam. My recommendation is when you're ready to go to production, you want to open a ticket and move from the sandbox playpen into production. And this way, I mean, let's face it, you are not going to be able to verify every email that comes into the system. So we need, customers are writing emails in. You want to respond to them. There's no way that you're going to be able to verify every customer. So moving into production will allow you to send email to unverified addresses. So that's basically what it's going to take to get this configured. Let's jump in and get this configuration done. The first action required is to create an email domain. Now, when we originally set this up in part 1, we clicked that we want email. So the system went ahead and created a domain for us. And as you can see, here is the domain, and it's been verified. Now, if you're adding this to an existing Amazon Connect instance, you're going to have the opportunity to just go ahead and add a domain. When you add a domain, you can add a domain that AWS creates for you, or through simple email services, and that's described here, you can go and perhaps add your existing domain. But what's important is that initially you are in what's called the sandbox or the playpen, whichever you prefer. And the only way you'll be able to send email to someone is to have your email addresses verified, both the from address and the to address. Now, since this is a contact center and we're going to have the public sending us email messages, it's not going to be possible to verify those email messages incoming. So to enable your ability to send that email, you're going to have to open a ticket with AWS support and request to be moved from the sandbox to production. It's a simple process. Go to SES and you'll see that it's easily accomplished. So at this point, we have our domain. Let's get on with the rest of the configuration. The next issue is the subject of queues. We have an incoming email. What do we do with it? There is no rule that says you can't send it to the existing sales queue or support queue. The fact that they have queue hold flows is irrelevant because that only applies to voice calls. So there's no harm in having an incoming email sent to these existing queues. But if we want to maybe do some additional manipulation of these emails, it might make more sense to go ahead and create some additional queues. And for purposes of discussion, that's what we're going to do. So let's add a EE underscore sales to handle email for sales. The hours of operation, the basic hours are 7 by 7, so let's use that. We'll allow emails to come in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's no need to configure the caller configuration. That applies to voice only. The outbound email configuration, we do want to perhaps have one for each of these, but we haven't created the emails yet, addresses yet, so we'll come back to this. Outbound email flows. This is something you might use if when sending an email, you need to update some, I don't know, your CRM package or some other resource. It is optional, it's not needed. And a lot of this is more appropriate to voice. But let's go ahead and save this. We'll need to come back. We'll do the same thing for support. E underscore support for support emails. Hours of operation 24/7. And we'll come back and add an email address here. And then we'll probably want to update routing profiles. So if you're on the sales team, we want you to be able to get email from the sales queue. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll also want to set some number of maximum contacts per agent. We're going to set it as 5, but we're going to allow you to handle an email while you're on the voice call. No problem there. Concept of priority, I don't know if we've discussed this, but right now, let me say that we want to handle voice calls first, priority 1. And not only that, we want to delay 10 seconds to make sure that we're clearing voice calls before we take email um, and we'll set email for priority 2. So that's the sales queue, the sales routing profile now includes sales voice calls and sales e-calls. Let's do the same thing for support. And we'll go ahead and add the email for the support team. Check the email box. Priorities, we'll set this priority to 2. We'll allow 5 maximum contacts, and you can handle email while you're chatting on the phone. Works for me. Let's do that. We will need to go back and forth on a couple of these configurations because they're interdependent. So sometimes you're configuring something and you're going to have to go configure something else and come back. You'll see what I mean in just a minute. So we're going over here to channels. We're configuring email addresses. Let's go ahead and create an email address. We're going to call this sales, and the domain friendly name is sales team. And the flow, that's one of the things we're going to come back to later and configure because we haven't configured this yet. I put a placeholder in there called contact router. And when we configure this, you'll understand why we're doing this. But we're going to come back. I mean, if you were configuring email addresses and you hadn't configured this router yet, that would be a reason to come back. Let's do the same thing for support. And the domain, we're going to select our domain, call this the support team. And that flow is going to be, once again, something called, I'll explain this, you'll see it in a minute. So let's go ahead, and we've got our email addresses created now. Now, the next thing I think we want to do is to create under content, we're going to create some message templates. So I've already created one called a support responder, and you're just going to go ahead and fill in the blanks, give it a name, and give it some content. They're also going to, here it's asking you who can use this. So let me see, this says support team. So we want the sales and support routing profile as well as the support routing profile to be able to use this. Okay, let's save that. And let's go check the sales autoresponder. And the routing profile that can use this is the sales team as well as the sales and support. Agents in the sales queue can use it, and agents in the sales support can use it. It's just an autoresponder. When an email comes in, this thing is going to send out an auto response. The sales team has received your text message, your email, and we're going to respond as quickly as we can, yada, yada. Okay. Okay, we're going to create a new contact flow called contact router. The purpose of this is to decide whether we've got an email, an SMS, a chat, and to route accordingly. So as per usual, we're going to start the call flow by setting our logging behavior. Next thing we want to do is check attributes. And the attributes that we're looking for, well, the first thing we want to do is go into the system, and the key we're going to check is channel. And we're going to see if the channel and the event is equal to voice, or if it's equal to email. And later on, we'll add chat and SMS, and we just need a way to differentiate the kind of incoming contact we have. If it's voice, well, what we're going to need to do is send voice to the contact flow we've already developed called the main greeting. I think that's pretty obvious. That's what we want to do with voice calls. If it's an email, however, once again, we want to check contact attributes. And this time we want to know who the email is to. So that's a system namespace, and you'll see here the to email address. And let's say if the condition contains sales, it's one. And if the condition contains support, so we're going to check for these attributes. If it's a sales email, we're going to want to use the send message block to send that autoresponder we created in templates. So we go here, it's an email, not SMS, it's an email. The from address is going to be, in this case, sales. The to address is going to be set dynamically in a namespace that is the system, and it is the customer endpoint address. That should be the email, the from address in the email. We'll say this is from sales. We're not sending a carbon copy anyplace. The message, we're going to use a template. You could just hard code something here, but we took the time to generate templates. So let's go ahead and use the sales autoresponder. Go ahead and save that. If it's contains support, once again, we're going to use the send message block. It's an email. The from address is the support team. The email address to is being set dynamically as the system customer endpoint address. And we're not copying it to anybody. And we're going to use, this time we're going to use the support autoresponder. Great. So the call comes in, we figure out it's an email address, and then we figure out who the email is from. Next thing we're going to do is to set the working queue. And this one is going to be the email for sales. And this one is going to be the email for support. Let's go ahead and we can come back and improve these error handlers, especially if there's a problem generating the template. But for the purposes of this demo, and then the next thing we're going to do is transfer to queue. That's something that can be shared. And at the end of that, we're going to disconnect. So let's take a look at this once again. We're setting the logging behavior. We're checking contact attributes to figure out if it's a voice or an email. Like I said, later on, we'll add SMS as a channel and chat as a channel. We're going to transfer to flow the main greeting if it's a voice call. So let's go ahead and finish this guy off. If it's an email, we're going to check further and figure out if it's an email to the sales team or to the support team. Send an autoresponder, set the working queue, and transfer the call off. That should get us where we want to be with that. And what, oops, failed to publish. Why? Let's take a look. Oh, we have to have a default. Let's go ahead and publish it now. Boom, boom, boom. Good, it published. All right, now we got to go back and finish a couple of things that we started. So we'll first go back to queues and we'll look at the email sales queue. And where it says default email address, we're going to now select the sales team. And for the support, we're going to do the same thing and select the support team. Okay, then we need to go back to the email addresses and just verify that we're selecting the flow to be used when the email address arrives. And that's where we're going to use the contact router. Okay, I think that pretty much completes the basic configuration. A few final checks here. You want to go into security profiles and just make sure that agents have this initiate email conversation permission. They'll need this. Permissions are fairly granular. If you go into any particular one, like agents, you can see that they're categorized as these different, for example, routing. Do you want them to have permission to view routing profiles or make changes and so forth? Each users and permissions, control panel, initiate email conversation. We want to make sure that that is checked. Okay, good. And then the other thing we'll want to double check is to make sure that data streaming, data storage. You go to data storage, you notice that there's call recordings, chat transcripts, live media, and these were set to go to a default S3 bucket provided by the instance initialization. You had the option to create a different one if you wanted to. Attachments, screen recordings, email messages. So if you want them stored away, you're going to go ahead and just make sure you're selecting an existing bucket or you're creating a new bucket. I tend to use the same bucket for all of this stuff. There's no reason not to that I can think of. I'm sure you can come up with a reason you want them accessible to a different application, and maybe that's why you do it. The other thing is to make sure that data streaming is enabled. So when you first come in here, you may find, I'm not going to get into the difference between a fire hose and a stream, but you're going to need a Kinesis stream. And if one doesn't exist, you're going to go ahead and create it. And you're going to enable data streaming, select the Kinesis stream. And the simple way to think of this is just a digital river that connects a producer with a consumer. In this case, we're talking about a Amazon Connect instance, the call center itself being the producer, and the consumer in this case is an S3 bucket. So we just want to make sure that we're sending our contact trace records and our agent events to the selected storage defined in the previous screen and over this Kinesis stream. Okay, so at this point, I think we've got our basic email configuration complete. And we can now go ahead and test this. Okay, let's test this configuration. I'm going to grab one of the email addresses. Again, I'll remind you that if you are still in the sandbox and have not moved your email to production, you will not be able to send an email to an email address that has not been verified. So you'll want to get out of the sandbox as quick as possible. Very simple to do. Ticket, open a ticket, and you're done. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to pull up this is the one of the interfaces that it's the basic CCP. It's pretty minimalistic. I'll show you both this and the agent workspace. But what I'd like to do here is kill two birds with one stone. We're going to create an email and send it to ourselves. Okay, so let's go to the new email. We're going to send this email to sales, and the subject is testing the sales email channel. Now, I'm sending it to myself because this is approved email. Okay. We're not going to use a template. By the way, templates can get pretty sophisticated. You can have variables in there like date and name, first name, last name, phone number, and then you fill them in as you create the email. But we're not using a template. We are free forming text form of outbound email test. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and send this. And as it's being sent, I'm going to put myself offline just for a minute. So this is what you see for a contact control panel. It's the minimalistic one, and you will find that it's appropriate for very limited agent activities. If we put this away and we pop up this one here, the agent workspace, which I think I already have open, it's going to look more like this. Okay. Q is a AI assistant. Not currently configured for that. We'll do that in a later video. You've got your customer profiles, your cases, and here you can see new email, create task, a number pad if you're going to make a phone call. And basically, this is how you control your. So let's go ahead and put ourselves available. We should be getting an email here shortly. Okay, as you can see, we're getting an inbound email. Subject can accept it or reject it. I'm going to accept it. At that point, we can see the email stream. So originally they got this is our auto responder, and then here's the incoming message. And I can reply, fill this in. I'm going to discard this. But as you can see, it's a full interface. So we'll go ahead and mark this as done. So we've added a new channel in addition to voice. We now have the ability to handle email, and in the future, we'll add SMS and we'll add chat. Okay. Hope you found this informative, and I thank you for viewing.